So, I wrote down 8 questions. And these are questions that when I took everything in and I kind of looked over all the information from the rubbish that we know isn't really relevant to the stuff that we would consider hugely relevant, these questions, I think, if they were truly answered, it might put a little bit more clarity on the case. And I'm going to share them questions with you. Now we're going to start with question 1. And I put, why would a stranger have kidnapped Summer? And I thought about this and I just thought, look, in the abundance of children that are out there, why would a stranger, and imagine what we're saying by stranger, we're talking about someone who is an opportunist, someone who has decided to travel to an area away from where they originate to somewhere where they would potentially consider viable to grab a child and get away. And I thought to myself, with what we know about Ben Hill Road and its residents, the terrain, how to get to properties, why would a stranger have considered that property a viable option? And that is without taking anything else into consideration, what we know about the day. Because what we've got to think, as of that day that this happened, none of what we've come to know after the event is relevant because nobody knew it. So we're talking about a stranger with no real knowledge of what this family were into, what they were doing, anything. They just happened to decide to travel to this area on this day and take this child. And I can't answer that. I can't. There's nothing that I think, well, this is why. Don't be so silly. This is an opportunist dream. Because it's not. There's an opportunist way of getting the head blown off. We said in another video, this place looks like a scene straight out of The Hills Have Eyes. In fact, if someone was to say, where would you not go to try and find a child to grab, this would be the top of the list. Question 2. If Summer was taken by someone familiar, and I mean familiar to the area, familiar to the family, who would the prime suspect be? We touched on another video that if you're looking at someone who is familiar with them, it kind of narrows real down as to who you would then be looking for. Because again, Summer didn't really go anywhere. So you're looking at the people who had access to her. And that was really only the home and the church. And I'm not pointing the fingers at any in particular person at this stage or anything, but I am stating a fact that there's only a certain amount of people who are then put in the frame when it comes to people familiar. And I hate to say it, but it is people like Jose, it is people like Andrew, it is people like Ali, it is people like Hunter, it is people like Robin from the church. All of these people are people who were part of Summer's life and have subsequently acted friggin' weird since Summer vanished off the face of the planet. So, familial abduction offers an array of options. It really does. Next question. What really happened at the swimming hole? I don't think that has even been answered. What really happened? There's 2 things that are very, very important what we know about the swimming hole. And that is that at some point during that trip, Summer was submerged underwater. But beyond that point, everything then becomes very, very cloudy. There's no clarity to it. Now what we've learned from the relationship between Candace and H, you know what I'm going? You know where I'm going with this, don't you? Was there a period of time that Summer was on her own and left unattended? Candace had stated that everything went in slow motion. And what do you connect slow motion feelings to? When things tend to be going in slow motion, it's that shock, it's that panic, it's seeing something happening and everything slows down. So what really happened that day at the swimming hole? And what was the true relevance to the swimming hole to what happened later that day? If anything. But something happened there. Something happened there, and I don't yet feel that this has been drilled down. Remember what we said before. When it comes to investigating a case, you take every element, every aspect of that case, and you dwell on it. You look at it. You absolutely exhaust everything about it until every question has been answered. And I'm not even mentioning the video inside the car, because ultimately it's all connected to the same thing. But we haven't even got clarity on that yet. Question 4. Why did Don take the Subaru? That day, why did he take it? There was absolutely no reason whatsoever to take that car. And look at the coincidence of it. On a day that he decides to take the new car to his dirty job, when his work van is there as well, just happened to be the exact same day that his daughter vanishes off the face of the planet. Now, I mentioned yesterday the Burla report, and I wonder whether this was a little bit of a strategic move. Did Don think that by taking this car, he was going to remove some information that he knew was going to be happening that day? Was the purpose to misdirect, to allow Candace to take that vehicle that she did and move in the manner with which she did without that being questioned? Like the places she went, like the duration she spent there. Because ultimately that van isn't going to have the diagnostics that the new car does. But when Don has stated that he has 7 different alibis, which that's a weird thing in itself, maybe one of the alibis is the diagnostics off of the red car. Number 5. Did Grandis rarely confide in a friend? Has that even been answered yet? Has somebody said, yes he did, no she didn't? We can all speculate, but at the end of the day, that conversation came from somewhere. And when you consider that that solitary piece of information will slot nicely into the timeline and answer a lot of questions about missing time. The one thing that we do get from that, though, is that that information stipulates that someone was removed from that property for not feeling well. So when you entwine that into the swimming hole incident and the fact that something happened that caused that slow motion feeling, again, this single piece of information is critical here. It's critical because it pieces together what could have happened. Next question. Number 6. Why did TBI go back to that specific place to search? And why was Ronnie Lawson visibly angered after it? There's only one reason that someone would return back to an area, and that would be because they either found something that forced them to go back there when they first looked, or they were tipped off to something they could have potentially missed. But ultimately, they returned. And they returned for a reason. They didn't just decide to randomly pick an area and go there. It was an intimate search, returning to an area that had raised speculation and suspicion. Why? Number 7. Could Summer have simply wandered off? Could she? What we know is that it was stated that Summer did indeed wander off. She was prone for it. She was prone to wander off. So could she have simply wandered off? And if so, why lie about it? Why make out that she would never wander off? Why go to the lengths of getting other people to say that she wouldn't wander off? What was so important about getting people to believe that she had been taken away from Ben Hill Road and there was no potential for her to be in close proximity to that house? Because ultimately that's what that would have done. If they considered that she could have simply wandered off, all of the searches, everything would be concentrated on the immediate ground around Ben Hill Road. And I believe that they would still be searching around Ben Hill Road now, because that would be the most plausible thing to happen. It would, at that point, it would have been the most plausible thing to consider. Summer, a little girl who was left on her own for a period of time and was prone to wandering off, had indeed wandered off. And it brings me to the 8th and final question. And that is, why is everybody lying? What could have happened to this little girl to cause every single person that had anything to do in her life have to lie? There is not one person, not one single person, who we can honestly say is telling the truth and has told the truth all the way through. Nobody. Not a single person. Every single person looks suspicious. This is almost like we are watching a purpose-built Cluedo investigation as a game, where they purposefully make every single person a possibility of who is guilty. There is not one person who could be eliminated. There is not one person around her that doesn't have some little element of doubt around them. Not from H, not from Ali, not from Candace, Don, Sherfy, sorry. Tim Shady, Andrew, Jose. The list goes on. Grandis, Grandma, Jodie Sue. There is not one single person who we could honestly say, no, they had nothing to do with it. Definitely nothing to do with it. Not even Benny Keys. Not even Benny Keys. We know that he had connections to Don pre-disappearance. He had spoken to, potentially met up with Don not long before Summer went missing. We can't even rule out law enforcement because there's speculation within law enforcement. Nobody is 100% in the clear. And I don't understand. I genuinely don't understand how we can be in this situation where a little girl has vanished off the face of the planet and not one person who has had anything to do with her is 100% not guilty of something.